It's rained every day since I got here. Last night it started raining, I don't know, maybe around midnight. Then it hasn't stopped. It's getting to be a little much for me. Coming from a dry climate, seeing rain every day is a little overwhelming. Plus I washed my laundry yesterday and it shows no sign of drying out anytime in the near future. I really just wanted to go to the beach today, but that's looking less and less likely.
I have to admit, though, the jungle does look beautiful in the rain. When everything is wet, all the colors appear far more vivid. And another added benefit, the mosquitoes really don't come around when it's actively raining. I decided to make the most of this incessant rain and find out if my new tent was waterproof, and my experiment yielded a resounding maybe? To earn my keep, I tore out an old termite-eaten hardwood floor and put in a new one, complete with a trap door and floor joists that have been treated with used motor oil, which is apparently the only way to keep bugs from devouring wood in this climate. Every morning I get to sit here drinking my coffee and taking in this amazing view. But this view is completely artificial and it takes almost daily intervention to keep the jungle from swallowing it back up.
Well, I've avoided riding in the rain for pretty much this entire trip, and now I'm about to go do it voluntarily.
I'm riding through the rain because I have to take the tools we used for the floor project back to their original owners. And also, because there's no internet at the farm, and I really need to go find some internet. Fortunately, it wasn't really raining that hard, and even though the road was muddy and wet, it wasn't difficult to ride on, it was just fun. Bruce here let us borrow his tape measure for our project. He's a reformed motorcycle rider who also happened to live in Arizona for a while, so we have a bit in common. I spent a bunch of time at his place with the intention of using the internet, but mostly just ended up listening to his amazing stories for hours and hours. In his front yard he has some pink bananas growing, which are pretty incredible looking, but even more incredible is what's on the inside. Unlike the varieties of banana that we eat, this banana has seeds. And it got me thinking that I don't really know why the bananas we eat don't have seeds. So I decided to do a little research. It turns out that most of the bananas we eat are actually sterile genetic hybrids created by the mating of two different species, which has happened both naturally and with the encouragement of human beings. The effect is similar to what happens when a horse and a donkey produce an offspring. Essentially, bananas are the mules of the fruit world, except that they can clone themselves, so there's no reason that they ever have to die. Here in the most jungly jungle, there's no shortage of tropical fruit. This tree is known as a water apple. The water apple is in the myrtle family, along with guavas, and the fruit look like an avocado, but taste like an apple. And I was eating about one a day, which presumably kept the doctor away. I got to pick my first cacao pod, but I forgot to eat it before I left. And of course, everyone's favorite,
Guanabana!
the guanabana or soursop is a large and delicious tropical fruit, which also stands high in the running for best named fruit ever.
Well, after 2.5 months and over 5,000 kilometers, I think I'm finally gonna get in the ocean. I hope it's warm.
The water was very warm, but it was also very wavy, and the seafloor was very rocky, and it took some time before I could find a place where it looked like I could swim without risking bodily injury. But eventually I got to take my first glorious swim in the warm waters of the Caribbean. On the way home I nearly ran over a howler monkey that was sitting in the middle of the road. I passed mere inches from him on the motorcycle, but when I ran back to get his picture he ran up into his tree. There's no shortage of strange animals here. This firefly, for instance, in addition to having a glowing butt, has 2 glowing spots on its shoulders as well. And it's at least 3 times bigger than any firefly I've ever seen before. And speaking of bigger, these giant ants are just destroying this tree. Turns out destroying trees is a favorite pastime here in the jungle. In clearing land for their gardens, my host had cut down a couple large rainforest trees, and they wanted them cut into dimensional lumber that they could use in building projects. So for once, I got to become that annoying chainsaw noise in the background of someone else's peaceful jungle walk. Also, apparently the bug in the lower right didn't really appreciate all the noise either, as he decided to move on shortly after I started. And speaking of moving on, it looks like it's time for my last Central American border crossing. On my way to the border, I got crop dusted, courtesy of Chiquita Banana Company. Apparently they're the only ones that still spray this way, and the locals say that all kinds of ailments can arise from this, including sterility, so I decided to see how long I could hold my breath.
Well, I'm in Panama. I've successfully completed my last Central American border crossing. It only took 1 hour and 45 minutes this time.
With a whopping 5 different offices, 4 fees, and a toxic bath, Panama now takes the cake for the most complicated border crossing I've encountered yet. As a reward for my border crossing ordeal, I was presented with windy, well-paved jungle road that offered the occasional tantalizing view out to sea toward the tourist paradise of Bocas del Toro.
This actually pretty accurately describes the road right now. I'm at the only gas station for the next, I don't know, couple hundred miles, and I can't get gas because they're filling up the tank, so I have to wait like 20 minutes. But, yeah, it's good to get off the motorcycle once in a while, so...
Fortunately, I also had some delectable homemade tamales from Costa Rica to keep me occupied while I was waiting for the gas.
Well, I've started to head up into the mountains. Pretty here. Very green, jungly. If that water didn't look so cold, I would totally go swimming. There's like a perfect pool in there. Oh man, what a day. I feel like I've been driving forever. It's getting dark now. I'm within a few kilometers of my destination. Hopefully I'll get there before it completely gets dark. But man, as soon as I came over the mountains onto the Pan-American highway again, it was nothing but construction. So between waiting for construction, waiting for gas, and waiting at the border crossing, there's been a lot of waiting today, but also a lot of driving. I've gone something like 470 kilometers. Google Maps said it would take about 7 hours, but well, I left Costa Rica at about 7:30, and right now it's almost 6.
Upon arrival at my destination, I didn't see anyone around, so I decided to slip through the gate and inquire within. And I was immediately confronted by the apparent end of my journey in the form of 3 large menacing Rottweilers. Turns out once they get to know you though, they're super friendly, nice little puppies. Still, very effective deterrent. I was back out through that gate in a blink of an eye, and I decided the best course of action would probably be to just honk my horn and wait for somebody to open the gate. And so I arrived at my new home for the next few days. I found myself in some beautiful seasonally dry tropical forest, surrounded by all kinds of cool things, and this place is literally oceanfront property.
The beach here opens out onto the Gulf de Mojito, and when the tide is out, the water's all the way out there. When it's high tide, the water's right up to the tree line here. For me, the tides are an incredibly fascinating subject. Since I didn't grow up near an ocean, I didn't learn until quite late in life that different places have highly variable tides. Some places, like the Bay of Fundy in Canada, have over a 40-foot tide. And some places, like the Mediterranean, have almost no tides. Another thing about the tides here is that they come in extremely quickly. I think I have to go back now because, well, my beach is about to disappear. Anyway, for those among you who are like me and find highly complex natural phenomena really fascinating, I will leave a link in the description of this video to another video about tides.
There's some overwhelmingly large bugs here, and also an incredible variety of birds. At the bottom of the property, there's some unused tilapia ponds which attract hundreds of storks and black vultures and herons too. And just on the other side of these ponds, I actually saw a caiman in the marsh. Didn't have my camera though, so I can't show you guys. But it was pretty cool, trust me. And every once in a while you can spot a lone frigate bird, effortlessly floating through the sky. The mangoes here aren't ripe yet, but that's okay because there's plenty of cashew apples. The cashew apples actually taste a bit like persimmons. They have a slightly astringent, mildly chalky flavor, but they're extremely sweet, and that makes up for it.
Remember the pejibai fruit that I showed you in Monteverde? This is the kind of tree that it grows on. Look at these spines. I've never seen a palm tree with spines before. This thing is pretty intense. This is an oil palm. Anytime you've ever looked at the ingredients on some food and seen palm oil, well, this is where it comes from.
There's also a bunch of moringa growing here on this property. Moringa's a pretty cool tree. It's super drought resistant and its foliage is edible, and it also happens to be a distant relative of the cabbage. And luckily for me, a bunch of the seeds are mature, so I can add some of this to my mobile seed bank to take further south. To earn my keep, I built a new staircase in one of the newer houses on the property, and for the first time since my last college math class 9 years ago, I had to bust out some trigonometry to make it all work. I had the great and distinguished honor to be the first one to ascend the staircase. But now that my work is all done, I think it's time to move on again. Well, that's all for now. Thanks everyone for all your encouragement and support, and I'll see you guys next time.
Did I mention it's hot here too? I actually had to zip off the bottom of my zippy pants for the first time on this trip.